Initiation into Hermetics by Franz Bardon. Where did we get to? Well, for me it feels like a long time. Right, Magic Psychic Training 8. The great moment of now. He who has arrived in his development to this point has to consider the kind of thinking, mainly the plastical thinking, very carefully. The concentration power promoted by many years of experiments is producing very impressive pictures in the Akasha by plastical thinking, pictures which are animated to a high extent and therefore seek to be realized. Hence, one should always foster noble and pure thoughts and endeavor to transmute passions into good qualities. The magician's soul should be ennobled by now to such a degree that he is no longer capable of evil thoughts or of wishing anything bad to other people. A magician has got to be kind, obliging, and ready to help at any time, to assist by word and deed, to act generously, considerately, and discreetly. He must be free from ambition, superciliousness, and avoid any boasting. All such passions would be reflected in the Akasha, and the Akasha principle being analogous to harmony, Akasha itself would certainly put the greatest obstacles in the magician's way to stop his further development, if not to make it quite impossible. Any further rising in a case like that would be out of question. Just remember Bulwer's novel Zanoni, in which the guardian of the threshold, nobody else but Akasha, sees the high mysteries not come overnight to half-baked or unworthy people. Akasha will understand to derange such a person mentally, arouse doubts of all kinds in him, or hold him prisoner by vicissitudes and reverses of fortune in order to protect the mysteries in every possible way. These mysteries will always remain hidden from incompetent persons, though hundreds of books should be published about them. A true magician does not know any hatred against religions or sects, since he knows that every religion does have a fixed system which is intended to lead to God, and that is why he does respect them. It is a well-known fact to him that every religion has made mistakes, but he does not condemn it, because every dogma is serving the spiritual maturity of its followers. In due course of his development, the magician goes through that stage of maturity where he can see with his mental eyes through every idea, every action and deed, no matter whether present, past or future. And it is quite obvious that he might feel tempted to judge and condemn his fellow men. But by doing so, he would act against the divine laws and create a disharmony. Sorry about that. A magician like that will not be ripe enough and make the experience that Akasha will dim his faculty of clairvoyance and Maya will deceive him. He must realize that the good and the bad are entitled to exist, and each has to fulfill a task. No sooner is a magician allowed to reprove or to reproach a person with his faults and weak points than he be directly requested to do so. And should he obey to such an entreat, he ought to do so with delicacy and discretion. The genuine magician takes life such as it is. He is enjoying the good things and learning something from the bad ones, but never will he hang his head. He is aware of his own weak sides and tries to overcome them, but he ignores every thought's any thoughts, but he ignores any thoughts of repentance, since they are negative thoughts which are consequently to avoid. It is sufficient for him to recognize his own faults and never to relapse into them anymore. For this reason, it would be fundamentally wrong to muse on the past and to feel sorry that fate did serve you with this or that disagreeable thing. Only weaklings do complain all the time, expecting to be commiserated. A true magician knows very well that impressions of the past may be animated by recalling them to the mind, thus producing new motives for putting new obstacles in the way. That is why the magician lives, if possible, exclusively in the present time, looking back only if need arise. He will limit to the most urgent of any plans concerning his future, and keep away from phantasmagoria and daydreaming. Nor will he waste the abilities acquired in hard travail, or give any chance to the subconscious to handicap him. A magician works purposefully on his development without neglecting his material duties, which he is fulfilling just as scrupulously as the task of his physical progress. Consequently, he will always look himself straight in the eye. He is supposed to be modest and, as far as his development is concerned, discreet. Since the Akasha principle ignores time and space, acting permanently in the present time, for the concept of time depends on our senses, the magician is advised to adapt himself as much as possible to Akasha. He must acknowledge as representative the great moment of now, thinking and acting according to it. The faculty of concentration with respect to the elements depends on the magic equilibrium, and is at the same time the best standard to check which of the astral body's elements have to be brought under control yet. For example, if the fire element can still get hold of the magician's astral faculties, he will not succeed very well in plastical visionary imagination exercises. In the case of the air element, the acoustic concentration will probably become more difficult for him. As for the water element, difficulties will arise from the concentration on the feelings, and in the case of the earth element, the control of the consciousness will be impaired. Mental wandering, for example, or trance, where a transference of consciousness is required, will become rather difficult indeed, and in such a case it would be necessary for him to follow intensively those concentration exercises which are affecting and influencing the respective element. Finally, the magician has permanently to perform and to deepen the concentration exercises. A sure sign of magic balance will always be equally managing all kinds of concentration, visionary, acoustic, tactual, and conscious ones. Arrived at this stage, the magician is supposed to keep any imagination at least for 15 minutes in his mind without the slightest disturbance, no matter which of the elements is concerned. He ought to manage all sorts of concentrations equally well, without feeling one or the other of them more in his line. Should this be the case, it would be a sure sign that the equilibrium of the elements in body, spirit, and soul has not yet been established perfectly. Then the learner has to seek to redress the magic balance by assiduous training. If he does not do so, all the shortcomings will delay his further spiritual work. Now follows the psychical magic training. In particular, we are concerned here with the or ob, or is that OR or OB, I'm not sure, of the Kabbalists, and the control of the electric and magnetic fluids. I assume that's or and ob. The electric and magnetic fluids. According to the informations given in the theoretical part, there are two main kinds of fluids originating in the four elements, namely the electric and the magnetic fluid. The electric fluid comes from the fire principle, the magnetic one from the water principle. The airy principle is the mediating element between the two. The earth element is bipolar, hence containing both the fluids, and it is electromagnetic, electric in the center, and on the periphery magnetic. According to their afore-described laws, these two fluids are working in all of the spheres, in the mental as well as in the astral sphere and in the material world too. These fluids are the cause of everything being. Next, let us deal with the knowledge and control of these two fluids, because managing these fluids will enable the magician to achieve everything in all spheres, no matter whether the mental, the astral, or the material world be concerned. The effect of any of these fluids, however, depends on the magician's maturity, whether he is strong enough and able to form the cause in the respective sphere. There are two fundamental methods in order to work with both the fluids, the inductive and the deductive method. The magician will learn how to use both methods in this step. Let us then discuss the electric fluid first. Control of the electric fluid inductive method, or control of the electric fluid inductive method. This exercise can be performed sitting down or standing up, just as it is more convenient for the individual. Take up your usual poise, close your eyes, and think of your body as being hollow. Furthermore, imagine that you are the center of a fiery ball, which is including the whole universe. You have got to imagine the fiery element red hot and bright, similar to the sun. You will feel the warmth on the periphery of your own body automatically at this imagination, because you did already learn all about this sensation in the chapter referring to the projection. Therefore, there is no need to draw your attention to it. Doing this exercise, you should perceive the expansion of the fire element within your own body. You have to imagine that the universal fire element, when expanding, presses the light into your hollow body. The more intensive and the more fiery you imagine the universal fireball, the more light is pressed into your body through the pores of the skin from all directions. Your whole body being loaded with light. You must perceive the pressure of the light inside of your body, feeling it like a balloon, swelling with light. The pressure of the light is supposed to go from the outside to the inside. At this moment, you will experience the sensation of an unusual fullness, as if you were ready to burst. Go on breathing calmly while performing this exercise, because in the dynamic accumulation of light, you will be tempted to hold back your breath, which you must avoid at all events. As soon as you have produced so strong an accumulation of light, a light dynamite that your body is nearly bursting, you will feel at the same moment that your whole body, mainly your fingertips, have been loaded with a strong electric current. Do impress this perception very firmly on your mind, because this is factually the electric fluid I am talking about. If you accomplish this accumulation, allow the universal fire to fade away slowly with the help of the imagination until it has gone out completely. At the same time, you have to imagine that the accumulated light is diminishing too, the power of expansion becoming weaker and weaker gradually until everything inside and outside yourself has turned pale and finally extinct. Hereby, the first exercise of the inductive method concerning the electric fluid is at an end. When, after several practices, you will have achieved a certain skill in producing the electric fluid without difficulties in your body, you may begin to perform the desire impregnation on the electric fluid. All you have to do is to imagine that the light accumulated inside of yourself, or better to say the electric fluid contained in the light, does reinforce and increase your active powers in the spirit, in the soul, and in the body. In this manner you can arouse all the active faculties, qualities, etc., which are imputed to the fire element and the air element in yourself. You have the possibility, for example, to increase your willpower, your faith, and your control of the element to a supernatural degree. It is indeed quite impossible to describe the range of power and strength achieved in this way with mere words, and you will be convinced of it best by your own experiences. In the previous steps, I did always point out how very important it is to ennoble the soul, to be free of passions, and to try to reach the magic equilibrium. If an unrighteous or passionate person who has not yet reached the full magic balance wished to perform these exercises, he would increase his passions only by activating them. He would hardly be able to control his passions, which could become fatal for him. Everybody will see that these warnings are not mere words or a simple moral lecture. A well-balanced personality, however, has nothing to fear. On the contrary, he will have every opportunity to ascend and be fortunate enough to realize his highest ideals. Control of the magnetic fluid inductive method. The performance with this fluid is exactly the same. You are sitting in your asana, imagining that you are as hollow as a rubber ball, but capable to take in the magnetic fluid. Now close your eyes and imagine the whole universe being filled with water and yourself standing in the center of it. You will automatically perceive the wetness and coolness on the periphery of your body. But do not give your full attention to this fact. Imagine how your body, similar to a dry sponge, thrown into the water, is sucking in the magnetic power from the universal water element. This imagination exercise must be permanently increased until you feel a dynamite in yourself, similar to a fully inflated pneumatic tire, and until you are quite certain that a higher accumulation is impossible. You are feeling the magnetic fluid like a contracting and in the same time attracting force. As soon as you have reached the peak of the magnetic power accumulation, allow the imagination to melt gradually away and the magnetic power accumulated inside of you to dissolve into infinity. If you are able to discriminate the difference between the electric and the magnetic fluid by means of frequent exercises, you will have the opportunity, just as in the case of the electric fluid, to strengthen those faculties in yourself which are indwelling in the watery and the earth element, such as mediumistic faculties, clear feeling, psychometry, thought reading, medial writing, and others. Control of the electric fluid or electric fluid deductive method, rather. You cannot work with this method before being able to manage both the previous methods. The deductive method is similar to the inductive one, but just in the opposite sequence. Do accumulate the fire element drawn from the universe into your body through the pulmonary and the pore breathing, or through both of them. Eventually, by sheer imagination too, in the same manner you have learned it. With respect to the inhaling of elements and their accumulation, while storing up the fire element, give your attention less to the warmth, which will be perceived automatically. The accumulated element will produce an enormous expansion, causing a strong irradiation of the electric fluid in the body to the outside, which will be mainly perceived by the skin of the whole body, just as if you underwent a treatment with an electric machine or a high frequency current. The irradiation of the electric fluid will become stronger and stronger, more pervasive, and more subtle by frequent repetitions, and by increasing the accumulation of the element, it can even be condensed to such a degree that it can be seen and felt by people not being trained at all. You can increase this force so far that you can make a neon lamp light up. These exercises are naturally not meant for such and similar purposes, and experiments like these are destined to serve your own conviction only. Apart from that, this power is for higher and nobler purposes. As soon as in this exercise you reached the peak accumulation of an element, viz. The highest degree or irradiation, or is that the vis-a-vis? I don't know. The highest degree of irradiation. Let the fire element together with the electric fluid dissolve into the universe. The body gets rid of the elements and the exercise is now at an end. Control of the magnetic fluid deductive method. Similar to the deductive method of handling the electric fluid described in the foregoing exercise is the process concerning the control of the magnetic fluid, with the only difference that, instead of fire, the water element will play its part. Accumulate the water element as dynamically as possible in your body, which you have imaginarily made hollow. To perform this accumulation, you may use the breathing through the lungs and the pores, or both kinds together, or else let the mere imagination play its role. Although you will perceive the wetness and coolness in any case during this accumulation, focus your attention on the external layer and the skin of your body. You will feel an astringent coolness and an attracting power, like that of a real magnet, especially on the periphery and the skin of the body. In the beginning, and as a result of any extremely strong dynamization, the sensation of this fluid will produce sort of a paralyzing effect until you get accustomed to it. If you manage to increase the accumulation to the peak, dissolve the water element together with the magnetic fluid gradually into the universe by means of the imagination. And this is the end of the exercise. You ought to master all these 4 methods so well as to be able to perform each method in a few moments with your imagination, and to produce the magnetic or the electric fluid inductively. You will accomplish this by frequent and indefatigable training. Be very attentive because controlling these 2 fluids is very important, since everything will be within your reach with the help of these 2 universal powers, no matter on which of the spheres the magician wishes to exercise his influence. In the beginning, these exercises have to be performed with the eyes closed. Later on, with open eyes, without any regard to the situation one happens to be in. It is important too to know that in all the 4 methods the magician will be inclined to strain the muscles or to hold the breath, which ought to be avoided. These exercises must be performed in a calm and, so to speak, unconcerned way, and should not be noticed by anyone else. The magician will find out now that the inductive method serves to direct a power from the universe to the inside, viz, into his body, his soul, and his spirit, whereas the deductive method is destined to send off a fluid from the inside to the outside. If the magician has gained a very good experience in the 4 methods, he can extend the exercise as follows. While following the inductive method, he has increased the electric fluid in him to the highest point, and allowing the external fire element to dissolve in nothingness, he can hold the electric fluid with its tension power and the respective fire element inside his body. When he has kept this fluid for a long time, as long as he could endure it, then he may allow it to flow gradually back again into the universe. The magician can operate in the same manner with the magnetic fluid. Do not advance before both these methods quoted here have not been practiced for so long, until you are capable to master them very well. The methods of controlling the electric and magnetic fluids described here are a kind of preliminary exercises, and as soon as they have become familiar to the magician, he may pass on to the final, namely the capital method concerning the mastery of the electromagnetic fluid, which I will describe in the following chapter. Consider the following analogies. Head and chest correspond to the electric fluid, abdomen, thighs and feet to the magnetic fluid. Now the magician's task will be to load the feet, thighs and abdomen up to the pit of the stomach with the magnetic fluid, the head, neck and chest on the other hand with the electric fluid in the manner described previously. He must be capable to load both these fluids dynamically, one after the other, in the two regions of the body to such a degree that he gets the sensation as if he were about to burst. After a prolonged period of exercises, he will be able to retain both fluids. Having arrived at this point, he presses the electric fluid into the right breast with the help of his imagination, forming a hollow around the heart region. But he better leaves the left breast free from loading when charging the upper region of his body. That means he does not load the left breast at all. This done, he is withdrawing the accumulated magnetic fluid from the lower region of his body with the help of his imagination via the left breast, storing up this fluid in the entire left hand right down to the fingertips, so the hand is turning out magnetic and now possesses an astringent cooling irradiation. In the same way, one proceeds with the right hand by accumulating the electric fluid, imaginatively drawn from the upper region, that is the head and the right breast, into the hand. The right hand is hereby becoming electric. One can feel the expansive hot electric energy in the whole hand, but mostly in the fingertips. Provided that there is no personal use for both powers, one dissolves them, letting them fly free from the hands into the universe in the imaginative way. By managing these exercises perfectly, one has become master of the electromagnetic fluid. Viz, master of two universal powers with the help of which one can practically achieve anything. Blessed be the magician's electric and magnetic hands, which will be of potential value and may become a real blessing for mankind.